Ladies and gentlemen, do not be alarmed. A cynical Brit has been allowed on the air with a microphone. You will listen, or the kitten we have hostage will be forced to fight a giant badger. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a Blue Please. Enjoy. Wow.
Radio.
Yes, I'm back here. This is Total Biscuit with Blue Please here on WoW Radio, and I'm not quite as diseased as I was last week. So thanks to everyone putting up with my sort of a supermarket trolley assistant voice there. The sort of there has been a spillage on Iron 3 in WoW Radio sort of voice, and it's not too good, is it? Let's be realistic. However, tonight I've consumed an entire bag of Haribo, and I'm most certainly on a sugar high. So, yes. Well, Battlegrounds got released, so I think Battlegrounds are probably going to be the main topic of the day. So that's fair enough. If you want to get involved in the discussion in the chat room, which is quite lively right now, I would strongly suggest you head over to www.wcradio.com, click the RC button at the top of the screen, and you shall receive the magical wonder of the chat room. Yes. Okay, coming up on the show today, Battlegrounds, more Battlegrounds. The topic of dying doesn't deserve loot, which is quite an interesting little thing which has been creeping in. A possible conspiracy theory here on Blue Please. We shall see a little bit later on. Of course, the usual features, Ask the Murloc, an extra special lengthened rap in the forums. We've got 8 minutes 20 of evil rap in the forums today, if you could stand such awesomeness. Of course, another Noob Cake news, specially themed to tonight's show, Imbecile of the Week, and all that jazz. Yeah. It's the way to go. Right. Okay. Let's get on with it. Deus Ex says, please nerf Total Biscuit. That's unacceptable. So, let's just ignore the nerf requests and all the rubbish in the chat room and get on with it. Battlegrounds. And the first comment of the day comes from Panda. Talk about Battlegrounds. Horde is better than Alliance. Fact. Now that brings me on to the first, hopefully semi-interesting point of the day. Horde greater than Alliance. Alliance greater than Horde. Horde greater than Alliance because Shaman is greater than Pally. Pally greater than Shaman. Blah, blah, blah. No. Okay. Let's face it. Here's how Battlegrounds, in my personal experience, is working right now. I have not had the chance to play that much. The queues have been ridiculously long and I can't be arsed, quite frankly. But I've been in the Warsong Gulch a few times. And here's what I've experienced. We can field a 10-man raid group, no problem, as Horde on Daggerspine Europe. No problem whatsoever. And the most I've ever faced, ever faced, is 5 Alliance. Now, why is that exactly? You'd have thought people would be queuing, and they are. They're queuing to get into the Battlegrounds. And why am I only ending up facing 5 Alliance? It's crazy. Because they don't stand a chance, let's be realistic. We walk all over them. It's not even that much fun. It's just a massacre. So what's going on? What is going on? Anyone got any ideas on this? I've been trying to get my head around the queue system. In the way that, obviously, you queue for a battleground. And you would think that you get thrown into a battleground when it was equal 10 versus 10. But it isn't. And that's crazy. That's a little bit odd indeed. So we go into a battleground, and we're against 4 or 5 Alliance. And I think that's a little bit odd. We've been waiting 2 hours for this? That's crazy. Now, it could be a case of the way that they banded it. Obviously the 41 to 50, 51 to 60, 21 to 30, etc, etc. Is it simply because they're not fielding enough players? Or is it because they're getting bizarrely split across servers? Is it something to do with the lack of servers and simply the way that they're distributing people? Ho-hum, I say. But it's very odd. And it's people seem to be getting these imbalances, which is bizarre because you would have thought that both sides would be able to field 10 players. Now, here's my view. My view is quite simple. they should not be putting you in the battlegrounds until there are 10 people ready to fight. The idea of the battleground surely was a balanced PvP experience with objectives, strategy, and lots of shiny gubbins. And Luminar is correct. Luminar in the chat room says this. Yeah, there's no skill or sport in an uneven match, and that's exactly it. And that's exactly the point. So why is the distribution so off? Why is it also that guilds, we don't get these guild versus guild team play? Why is it that you cannot join as a guild, as a raid group even, to Warsong Gulch, or even to Alterac Valley? Why is that not possible? Technically it is. It's possible if you are willing to wait in the queue. However, you can't join as a raid group and everyone will not get dumped in at the same time. And there is the rub. That needs to be sorted. I think the chances are you would get a better fight if you allowed entire raid groups to sign up as a raid group. You get your leader to go there, click the sign up as a raid group button, and they all get dumped in there. And of course, Azul makes a very good point. The problem with that is, if you do that, you're going to be waiting 3 hours to get into a battleground. And there's a big reason for that. It's quite simple. Not enough battlegrounds. Now, on the test server, we had sort of 12 or 13 different instances. Plenty of battlegrounds for all. Here we have what? 3? That's the most I've ever seen. Why is that? My theory is simple. Basically, this is what happens. I reckon they've got a specific amount of servers and they're dividing the instances across all the servers they have. So say they've got a server farm and it's capable of running so much, so therefore they simply divide the instances equally across the realms. So you've got 3, 3, 3, etc, etc. That's cool, but it may in fact simply be a case of more servers. More servers. Now, I've been told that you can join as a group. That's cool. However, it comes back to the point at hand. It takes ages. Sentence says this, that you can join as a group, but instead of clicking join, the leader clicks join as a group. Cool. Never seen that done, but then again, I haven't been in Battlegrounds enough to try. So how are they going to solve it? Can they even solve it? It's difficult, because on one hand, you've got a case of people saying there's not enough instances having to wait in queue for hours, but then you've got the other side, and that says you need enough people on both sides to make a new instance. Harsh. It's the banding, and I think that's the reason. Because you don't get enough people. For example, I wander over to the Martian Rampart, and 90% of the people I see outside are level 60s. And there you go. I will rarely... Usually I'll hang around outside the Martian Rampart for about 30 minutes or so, dueling. But I'll never really find enough people to duel. I end up dueling level 60s as my 49 on the basis that I'm not going to be able to find enough people my level to duel with. And as Daniel accurately says, the instances are dynamically created if there's enough people queued on both sides. And there you go. Yet we're waiting hours for this. We can't get 10 people in there. And I wonder if it's a catch-22 situation. The reason you're not getting people in there is because they're put off by the wait times. The reason you're getting the wait times is because you're not getting people in there. Oh, hum. Now, Alterac, as far as I'm concerned, is completely and totally rammed. There's loads of people trying to get in there. And that actually may be a case of the instances are simply full. Interesting. However, we've just been spending the last 11 minutes or so whinging about Battlegrounds. I like to think the Battlegrounds were an exceedingly good idea. a very different PvP experience to the usual Zerg. And later on, I'll be dealing with a few more of the complaints to Battlegrounds. And people have been using Battlegrounds as a sort of soapbox to complain about various things. Apparently, I quote you this. Battlegrounds have killed 1 versus 1 PvP. Really? That's interesting. Because as far as I'm aware, there was no such thing as 1 versus 1 PvP, except in a random meetup scenario. Let's take the example. I'm in Feralus. I'm beating up some ogres, I'm grinding ogres, blah blah blah, doing quests around there. I encounter a single alliance. That alliance tries to get the drop on me while I'm fighting, or I try to get the drop on the alliance while he's fighting. The other alternative is that we run past each other on horses. I get off my horse, I poly or frost Nova. There's your 1 versus 1 PvP. How anyone can argue that Battlegrounds has killed that, I am not entirely certain, because, quite frankly, it's still gonna happen, because people are still questing. There's loads of 1 versus 1 PvP. You don't usually go out looking for it, and as Luminar in the chat room accurately says, most PvP is not organised. And he's correct. There is 1 versus 1 PvP until you win. Then you go on to the next person, and the next person. It's when you bump into someone, you do not go out hunting. When you go out hunting, you go out hunting in groups. And that's not 1 versus 1 PvP, that's ganking. If Battlegrounds has killed ganking, then that is fantastic. And Blizzard should be commended. In fact, they should be given an entire basket of fresh fruit. I kid you not, an entire basket for doing such a thing. 1 versus 1 PvP is still happening. I think you would have to be totally and utterly blind to believe otherwise. In fact, it would not entirely surprise me if the people arguing for this are the people who are hanging around in Molten Core or in the Battlegrounds all the time, and then say that 1 versus 1 PvP is gone. No, 1 versus 1 PvP is still in the same place as it was always. And that is out in contested territory, questing. End of story. It is still there! So do not argue otherwise. That would be quite silly. On the scale of ganking, has it affected ganking in any possible respect? Yes, no, possibly, maybe. There you go. How can anyone possibly comment? It's a large-scale game we're talking here. And we cannot possibly argue that Battlegrounds has killed off ganking. That's just silly. No, that's it. I mean, that is just ridiculous. It happens all the time. Ganking is simply an unfair fight. Yes? And creating an unfair fight is not tricky. You go to a quest area with a large group and you gank. Those people questing are not in the Battlegrounds because they're questing. There are plenty of people questing. If people were still in the Battlegrounds, they would not be leveling particularly fast. Especially if you're getting in one Battleground every 3 hours. What it did do, as far as I'm concerned, is it kicked Hillsbrad versus Southshore, the eternal ping-pong match of death, in the head. And rightly so. Because it was rubbish! Totally horrible. Eternal death. And while people may say that Alterac is effectively the Southshore vs Tarren ping-pong match, at least there are ways of breaking the stalemate. I.e., the big feckin' frost demon. The charge of the wolves. Tactics, strategy, special things. It's far more tactical. It was deliberately designed to be a battleground environment. That's why it's called a battleground, oddly enough. Hillsbrad is one big, fat gank fest. At least it was. Tarren Mill versus Southshore was horrible. And to be quite honest, I do not mind if it is gone for good. One rant down the tube. At least that's the plan anyway. Well, I had a request. Yes, I know exactly what it was. So I'm going to get on with it. You are listening to WoW Radio. You are listening to Blue Please with Total Biscuit. Topics of the day include Battlegrounds. Get in the chat room right now. There's a big discussion going on right there. WCRadio.com. Click the RC button at the top of the screen. This one goes out to all the druids out there, all the hunters, possibly the shamans as well. It's Motley Crue. It's Wild Side. Enjoy.